Welcome everybody, good evening. My name is Corey Smith. I am an account executive over at Kustomer, thank you very much. Today we're gonna have our customer book club discussion around this book, Enable Better Service, by the author, Aarde Cosseboom. And just a little bit about Aarde, he's the Senior Director of Technology Product Analytics of the global member services part of Textile. And if you're not familiar with Textile, they have brands such as Just Fab, Shoe Dazzle, Just Fab for Kids, Fabletics, you name it. They do it well when it comes to direct-to-consumer retail. So again, Aarde, thank you so much for joining us. Anything you want to add to the introduction that I just gave you?
Yeah, I'm a little tired from flying in from about 10 minutes away. No, I'm just kidding. I live here. This is actually the Textile office, so can't really give you a virtual tour, but we're in the lobby boardroom. It's called Fifth Avenue. We name all of our conference rooms based off of popular fashion streets around the world. So we're in Fifth Avenue. Kind of staged it a little bit, but you can see some of the product that we have behind us, just so you could get that feel of, you know, fashion and retail.
Yeah, this is an amazing setup you have here. And obviously there's an in-house studio where you film your commercials and things of that nature. So first off, thank you for having us here today. We also do have a studio audience here as well with us. So it is live with the studio audience here at the Textile office. So before actually jumping into the questions, Aarde actually, again, wrote this book with the intention to really give, I guess, the customer service audience a good sort of, here's like, you know, the everything you need to know about customer service, right? It's about the product, it's about the people, it's about the process, and really focusing on that to really help you drive a very strong foundation for your organization. I do want to read sort of the insert, or actually this is off of the Amazon page itself, to give you a sense of what this book is actually about. So it says, in Enable Better Service, Aarde Cosseboom shows you how to transform your customer service team into a high-performing function of your thriving business. Together, we can develop the future of contact centers by leveraging people, process, and product methodologies, changing mediocre experiences into extraordinary ones, and developing long-lasting raving fans. In this book, you will find technology strategies, how to select and engage with partners, and how to recruit and maintain high-level talent on your team. So that's a lot, very comprehensive, that you're covering in that book. So first off, again, I want to thank you for putting it together. For me, again, coming from the space where I wasn't really familiar with contact management, just the whole ecosystem itself gave me a good peek into your world and what matters to most people as well. So I'd love to start off just getting a sense of, like, you know, given the fact that you've got a 9-to-5 job, you got some other, you know, entrepreneurial aspects that you're working as well too. I know you recently got engaged as well. So you got a lot on your plate, but you have a lot, you know, going on in this book. How did you find time to actually put this all together?
Yeah, great question. So the real boss is the fiance. She really rules everything. The second boss is the 9-to-5, of course. Have a really strong support team here at Textile. They support the driven entrepreneurial innovation mindsets. So first you have to start there. You have to have a good foundational area around you to make sure that you're not just working against the stream or against the grain. And the other thing is, when you have downtime, and we have contact centers around the world, flying to the Philippines, 16-hour flights, there's no internet, sometimes the TV is not working. You know, it's good to just sink your head into a project, and that project for me was writing this book.
Awesome. And to that point, again, I know, like, the crowd that we have here, and even the audience that we have that's tuning in or will tune in after the live stream with the recording as well, you know, a lot of them have desires to be thought leaders like yourself, or even just want to contribute to the industry by, let's say, writing a blog post or a white paper or something to that effect. Can you just kind of explain what the process is like in terms of, like, creating something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So a book is a little bit different than blogs, but I can give you the generic overview. Definitely you want to start with a frame. So for a book, it's table of contents, it's chapters. Then when you drill into a specific chapter where you want to talk about a specific topic, you have to do the individual pieces of the chapter. So maybe it's 2 or 3 phases. Maybe it has some sort of conclusion. Maybe it ends with an open-ended question like, what should we do next? And then go into the next chapter. Same with a blog. Blogs are a lot shorter, a lot less content per se than a book, but you still want to invoke those thoughts, and you want to make sure that the reader is engaged not only throughout but also at the end, and hopefully they're thirsty for more. You leave a little bit more to be desired. So that's the goal.
And that's actually a good point on the more, like, again, very comprehensive book. But I'm sure there are certain things that you probably missed that you wish you could have added, like, to the book. So, like, what other areas do you feel like you could have, added to this to just kind of, give that complete 360 view? Again, very comprehensive, but I'm sure there's something else you wanted to add to that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So this is reimagining and enabling better service for the contact center and customer service space. And it's my view into that. So it's not perfect. There's things that I've missed. There's people that know better than I do in certain areas. I'm not toting that I know all, and everything's encompassing in the 300 pages. But what I have found was it's really hard to find all of this information consolidated into one place. And people kept asking me for specific answers to questions that they have, problems that I've seen in my past, problems that they face in their current roles and at their current companies. And I said, you know what, let's just write these all down and then start the conversation. So the book is really avenue to start the conversation and start a community of people who can have conversations around those topics. So each chapter I try to frame out exactly what the topic is, and there's actually 3 different kind of areas that they all fall into,
Right.
and I'm sure you'll allude to that a little bit later, and I'm sure there's another question coming around that.
No, we'll definitely get to that. And again, just to give everybody a teaser, so around the people, the processes, and the product as well. Now, you said obviously, like, and again, from where I'm coming from, this had a lot of what wasn't really succinctly put into, like, a variety of books. Like in your book, you mentioned, Be Our Guest and a couple of other different books. What would you say, like, the biggest inspiration for you was from the standpoint of, like, a book or 2 for this particular book?
Yeah, great question. And I cite them in my book a couple times, but Effortless Experience is a great book. That's a great,
Big one.
yeah, and just the phrase effortless experience, just those 2 words together, that really hits home when you're talking to someone who oversees a contact center, someone who oversees someone who has to support members who have gone through the trenches, the 1st, the 4th, the 5th line of defenses before they get their answer, after hours of time and effort. So creating that effortless experience is extremely important. And that's one of the inspirations of my book, because you can't deliver better service or enable better service without creating an effortless experience. I kind of re-termed it a little bit and said frictionless experience, just to give it a little bit more oomph. It's really the same idea, the same message. So a lot of credit goes to that book. I would also say 2 books that I didn't necessarily cite. There's one that I did, I'll mention next, is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Great. He is a great author. The way he writes is just amazing. Each chapter is a different story, and it sucks you in from the beginning. There's data to prove it, so it's not dry, but it's also got some meat to it. And then the other one that's very similar is Originals. Originals is a great book as well too. Great storytelling, telling about, in the first chapter, it talks about Warby Parker and how they wanted to disrupt the eyeglass industry by doing eyeglasses cheaper online, where you could order them, and consumers weren't ready for that, and then they came out to market and made it work. And that's what an original is, or an outlier is. And those are the kind of inspirational books that I read.
Yeah, and you talked about, obviously, the effortless experience. And one of the things I really liked about what you talked about in the book is kind of creating that same frictionless experience for the agents as well too. And that's obviously something that we like to tout, creating that environment. So it's great to hear you, like, touching on that as well. So let's talk a little bit more about the content of the book. So I know one of the big things that you're advocating against is sort of the world of on-premise, right? So moving away from on-premise and onto, let's say, Web 1.0 or Web 2.0. I think you even said so much as like the on-premise is going the way of the dodo bird, it'll be extinct relatively soon. What are I guess some of the best practices that you've seen companies use when it comes to Web 1.0 and Web 2.0?
Yeah, great question. I don't have a crystal ball for it, but I know where we've been with regards to technology, where we're going. There is no right or wrong. On-prem still works for a lot of different companies for different use cases.
Sure.
Like people who have very strict compliance regulations and rules, and HIPAA compliance, GDPR. Cloud does solve for those things, but gives you a little bit less control over them. They're still compliant. They're still extremely beneficial to move towards. The benefit of cloud is that you become more agile. So in the book, I give the analogy of on-premises like being an elephant. It's really hard to move when you're an elephant. Going from point A to point B takes a lot of energy. That's kind of like having on-prem. You can't integrate with a lot of things. You have to buy a new server rack. You need to, create new licenses. That'll take 3 IT people a month.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in the cloud, it's very nimble. It's like a hummingbird. You can go from flower to flower. You can move. It's not that huge 1,000-pound elephant in the room. It's really a nimble bird that can move around and be more agile. So it's not for every business, but if you are a business that wants to act more like a hummingbird in that example, don't buy something that's going to tie you down, which is an on-premise solution. So, but if you do need to have that stability and that strength, and you're okay with having the time and energy, then on-premise could be for you.
Sure. But again, with the internal resources on top of that, you got to expand. It's probably hard to just to get things moving, right? And that kind of draws to the next question about the priority pyramid, right? So figuring out what it is that your company is trying to achieve and sort of prioritizing that via this pyramid. So tactical question around that, like how do you figure out what is at the top of that pyramid? Is it based on like certain KPIs you feel you want to drive, or is there something else that goes into that?
Yep, good question. So the book is framed into 3 kind of categories. The first couple of chapters are about technology, so the product side of the house. Then once we get that out of the way, the next 5 chapters, that's about process, like how you've got the right technology in place. How do you execute with that technology? And then the back half of the book, which is the last 5 or 6 chapters, that's talking about the people. So you have to have all 3 to work. It's a pyramid.
Right.
When you go into the second grouping or the second phase and you're talking about process, the priority pyramid is a great tool where you have a pyramid, and it can be as many layers deep as you want, but there's one priority that's on the top. That's your big, hairy, audacious goal. That's the thing that you want to accomplish in 2020 or whatever quarter you're focused on. And then below that, there's 2. Below that, there's 3. If you have multiple layers, some companies go all the way down to 7 different tiers, and you have this huge, massive board that has all of your different initiatives for the year or for the quarter or for the decade or the next 5 years. How you prioritize one over the other is really, really hard. How can you decide that this is more important than the other thing?
Sure.
Of course, economics plays into it. So return on investment. So an actual ROI. Is the business going to gain financially or economically from this decision, from this project? The second thing is non-ROI. So are we going to gain something that isn't necessarily a cost savings or isn't going to bring more money in, but we're going to have happier employees. We're going to feel better as a company. We're going to get placed as the best place to work in LA or San Francisco. So that's that kind of non-ROI that's important as well too. And then the last piece is, when you're categorizing these, is what's the actual business impact? So you can have something that it's going to save you a ton of money, your employees are going to be super happy, but is it actually going to do anything outside of your organization? Is it going to affect the outside world? The answer may not be so great. You might want to deprioritize that and do something that isn't going to save you a lot of money, isn't going to be, you know, the project that everyone's going to be super happy about internally, but it's going to be the thing that makes you the next Facebook, Google,
Sure.
LinkedIn, whatever it is.
To contextualize that a little more, like is there an example that you can kind of give us of like a past project that you've worked on, and then the looking at it through those specific lenses that you just discussed?
Yeah. So if you look at both and you look at them side by side, there'll be two examples and then why one is outweighs the other. So speech analytics, listening to the customer sentiment, CSAT score for an organization, not going to have a huge ROI. You're not going to save headcount. You're not going to reduce handle time. So there's no like monetary return on investment there.
Gotcha.
Your employees may actually hate it. You know, there's compliance that they have to do. Their leaders are pulling them into meetings saying like, oh, you missed this phrase, you didn't click that button. That's not very popular internally. So the non-ROI is not great.
Mm-hmm.
But then the business impact is if you have programs like that in place, you're going to create better CSAT scores, NPS, brand integrity. People are going to know your brand. They're going to want to shop with you. Your Better Business Bureau ratings are going to get better. So that's an example of one that doesn't necessarily have an ROI attached to it. And then you put that against maybe a chatbot where you could deflect calls, reduce chats, reduce headcount, reduce handle time. You're saving tons of money left and right here. You're creating a good experience, which is kind of the non-ROI to your members, which is great. But is it really a big business impact? Maybe, but is it as much as fostering your NPS or CSAT? Maybe not. So you have to pit those two together and see which one have a higher priority. So it all depends on what your North Star is for your organization or your customer service, and decide, you know, what's more important to us. Is it saving money and being more efficient, or is it better NPS and having a better brand where people are happy to shop with you?
Got it. I appreciate that. And when it comes to like these types of like projects, right? Like there's the goal that you ultimately want to achieve, but there's the partners that you got to bring in order to help you achieve that goal, whether that's the external third-party technology companies that you work with, or if, for instance, might be internal parties that you have to bring in to help you with this. Now, you being obviously on the product side of things, you have frontline people that, you know, need things done ASAP, right? Or have competing projects that they want to get done. How would you, what sort of best practices would you give those individuals, those frontline individuals, in terms of like managing those internal relationships to kind of get their case across? So sort of building that business case internally. Because your book does a great job of outlining that as far as like how you work with third-party companies or technology partners. But I'd love to hear just how you do with your internal partners.
Yeah, great question. So whenever we have a priority pyramid block, so let's say we want to initiate a chatbot or we want to deploy a new cloud-based product that's going to achieve some sort of goal, we boil it down to a single sentence that defines that block, which is, we call it the user story. It's used in Scrum and product training a lot. And that user story is very simple. It's there's a noun, a verb, and an outcome. So it's, I'll give an example. So as a customer service operations leader, that's the noun, I want to reduce handle time for my agents. That's your verb, that's reduce. And then the outcome is we will have cost savings on the chat channel, something like that. So you want to put those three things together, and it's one single sentence that when someone, even internal, external, you could deliver that to vendors. You could say, hey, we want to deploy a chatbot. Here's our project. Here's the single sentence we're trying to achieve. Help us achieve that. It's a lot simpler than 20 bullet points or a project summary or 4 different leaders coming in and having different ideas of what a chatbot's going to achieve. So that's what I would recommend.
Keep the message simple.
Yeah. And assign one project leader and make sure that that project leader is always refocusing internal and external teams towards that single line.
Gotcha. Another concept within the book that I find to be very nuanced is the idea of like making the contact center from a cost center, transforming it rather from a cost center into a revenue generation center, or you even just said like a sort of value added center. Can you give like some specific examples on like, one of each of those?
Yeah, I love this because that's when you start to transform your customer service team, which is sometimes considered the cost center. It's like, well, if we could just automate everything, it'd be great. And customers would never have to talk to us. We don't have to spend a dime in that area. Instead, turning that kind of perceived negative into a positive by creating it into a profit center or revenue generating team, however you want to define it. Lots of different examples. The thing that I say in the book and the thing that I really stand behind is your customer service team, after the sales cycle is done, someone is a customer of yours, especially if it's a membership based or a B2B based environment, they are the people who carry the relationship until its end. So they are the eyes, the ears, they're literally every sensory piece of your organization. Why would you want to skimp on that? Why would you want to put that into the farthest corner of the office and starve it? You want to foster that because it's a lot easier to maintain customers for their lifetime and get more out of that customer relationship than it is to find a new person. It's much harder to do that. So yeah, the little things here that could help you turn your cost center, your contact center into a profit center. Upsells and cross sells, that's an obvious one. So if you're selling a product, people are calling in, they need support on that product, you've resolved the problem or issue. If it is appropriate, sometimes it's not, but if it is appropriate, telling them about the other products that you have in the line or third-party tools, or, for us, for fashion, it's like, oh, we're so sorry that happened to your shoes. We're going to reship you some shoes. And by the way, did you know that there's a new version of this shoe that's like got better straps and it's online? I'll give you 20% off now if you purchase. So just upsell, cross-sell, inform, take a negative conversation potentially and turn it into a positive, both for the member or customer and also for the company.
Right. And you, again, in the book, you advocate for training reps on how to do that as well. So I encourage everybody to get a copy of this. If you're in the contact center, get a copy of this for all your agents, just to, again, add some tremendous value to the organization. Now, I know you have another book coming out, so I definitely want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that book and what people should expect from that. Yeah,
so almost done with the second book. Not going to be as long. So for everyone who's read my book or is currently reading, it's not going to be 300 pages, which is good. It's going to be talking about AI and conversational AI. So how chatbots work, voice bots work, drip campaigns, how to use AI in your sales department, in your customer service department, how AI is being integrated into a lot of different products today. For example, your product has AI built in multiple different areas and facets. How it's going to start to be the future of the cloud-based ecosystem, and how AI from one company speaks to AI from another company from a conversational standpoint. So imagine a chatbot talking to a chatbot, or a voice bot talking to a voice bot. A great example of this is Google Duplex. They did a test where they have an outbound voice bot on your behalf schedule a reservation at a restaurant.
That's awesome.
So a bot that will call to a restaurant and say, we need a table for 2, 3, at 4 o'clock, things like that. And it can react to the person who's taking that reservation. So I'm thinking about that and that technology, like call Adidas and return my shoes for me. And then when that happens, if Adidas also has a bot, how do they communicate together and not create friction? So we're going towards that in the next 5-10 years. And how do we, as companies and businesses and customer service teams and sales teams, how do we support that?
Sure.
Like, how do we support thousands or millions of calls from bots from our customers as opposed to actual real humans?
The bots are going to run the world at some point. It's awesome. So we got about 5 minutes, and like I said, we've got a studio audience here, and I want to give people an opportunity to ask some questions. So I do want to open it up. If anybody has some questions for us, would love to field them and let Aarde here take a crack.
Yeah, I had a question. So we were actually talking about it prior, and one of your chapters is around picking a partner, not a vending machine, right? And you break it down into the decision matrix of a couple different qualities that you're looking for. I think we talked about earlier, there's this interesting dynamic in business right now where they both need each other, have a hard time, you're kind of meeting in the middle. You broke it down, I think it was 5 distinct measurements of how you measure, a partner. I'm curious, one, how you go about that due diligence in advance of potentially interacting with a potential partner, and then what are some of the keys for you, maybe the one that could be the most important for you as you think about a potential partner?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to repeat it just in case they didn't hear it. But the question was around the chapter around picking a partner instead of a vendor. And of the 5 different areas, what's the kind of key one, the cornerstone one that I stand behind? And framing that chapter a little bit for people who haven't read it, you want to pick a partner instead of a vendor. A vendor is, if you think about it, it's like a vending machine. You put the money in, you get the thing out. There's no human interaction. There's no empathy. If you get the wrong thing out or the thing gets stuck, it's just, that's a bug. That's not a feature, it's a bug. So talking to a live human, so like going to a store and buying a candy bar instead of going to the vending machine, you could pick that candy bar up, start the purchase, and the store clerk could say, you know what, that one's not that great. You want that one. That box came in 4 weeks ago, like this box came in 3 days ago. That experience of having a true partner that's on your side to help you, that's really important. So of the bullet points, I would say, and there's like 5 in the book, I go into them in a lot of detail. I would say you're not alone. So use the people around you to help understand. You could use Gartner, Magic Quadrants, you could do all the research you can, but use your partner ecosystem, the people that you know, people who have used those products or have heard of those products, and ask them questions, because they're not going to steer you wrong. They're not going to say, oh yeah, you want a Snickers bar? Go to the 3rd floor and use the vending machine. You got to kind of hit the button hard, otherwise it won't fall down. They're going to say, you know what, you want a Snickers bar? Go across the street. This guy named Joe, he runs the shop. I see him every morning. He gives me my cup of coffee. That's the kind of advice that you want when you need support picking a partner. Great question. Anyone else?
We got another question. 2 more questions. We'll take them.
Oh, sure. So we're at the beginning of the year. Everybody's doing their yearly plannings and trying to figure out what to do next. So what is it that gets you excited about the new year, and any of the initiatives that you want to kind of drive forward in your team? Yeah,
great question. So questions around how do you focus, especially in the new year? What's your plan for the next 2020, the next 12 months? How do you plan it? That whole process is extremely hard. It's extremely difficult because usually your teams, they go on this great Christmas break, they're all fully refreshed, and then hit the ground running, and they call it like the worst Monday, which is the first Monday of the year. Everyone comes back and everyone hits the ground running, and you have to not only catch up with everything you did over the holiday break, but you also have to plan everything you want to do for the rest of the year. And usually the first Monday of the first full week of January isn't normally on the first of you're already 5 days in, it's like January 5th or 6th.
Catch up.
Yeah. And then by the time you get your head around, which takes another week or 2, what you want to do for the rest of the year, you blink and it's already February, and you lost 30 days. You lost the first third of the first quarter. You're like, oh my God, there's so much ground to cover. So what I recommend is either break the cycle, try to do all that planning not in Q1. Try to do it. We do it at the end of Q3. So we plan for 2020 in Q3. We have all of our offsites. We do all of the vision boards. We create the priority pyramid, and it's there. And then what we do is we let our employees have that time to relax and go home. But right before, we say, as an organization, we send an email saying, hey, everything we just agreed upon doing next year, you're not working, but just think about it. while you're gone. And then when you come back, it's not going to feel like you're catching up on 800 emails and you have 3 projects that are overdue already. So from a process standpoint, that's what I'd recommend. And then the second recommendation is just keep it simple. Like, you don't need 100 projects. Like, just focus on 10 for something like that, and then achieve them, and then add more to the board as needed. Take some things off if they take too long.
That's a phenomenal idea. I wish, like, in terms of just like taking things a little bit before the end of the year and getting a sort of a jump start on the year. Fantastic idea. It's harder like in the sales world, obviously, because you got to get to Q4, get out of Q4, jump right into Q1. Your sales kickoff is right there, and it's February, and your manager's like, where?
It's so funny. It's like the yearly cycle. Like, we know we're on this treadmill, and it repeats every year. The same thing, the same conversations, same headaches, but we never break it. Like, it's if you could just break it, it just relieves a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I want a bot to just help me. Like,
I know, right?
So I don't have to worry about that. We have time for one more question.
Oh, no, I was thinking.
I want to ask a little bit about the golden circle, which you speak up a little about in the book, and it seems to be kind of the basis for a lot of the rest of it. I didn't hear anything else. Maybe I missed it while you were speaking. Maybe you can say a little bit of kind of how you begin with why and go from there.
Yeah, so golden circle, I stole it from Simon Sinek, so I have to give the props there. Yeah, so the idea is start with why. If you have time, and it's a very quick TED Talk, watch Simon Sinek's, can't remember the specific part of it, but it's the start with why. And basically the idea is don't start with the product on them, the what. Don't figure out the how first. Like, how, like when you're creating a device, like a TiVo device, something really complex, right? Don't say like, okay, what are we creating? How do I create it? And then why are we creating it? Because you may create something that doesn't actually have a why. Like, there's no reason for it. People don't want it. Start with the why. So say, when TiVo came out, it's like, well, I hate missing my favorite shows. I'd love to be able to rewind or record or watch. So their why was kind of, this is a while ago. It's the Netflix mentality of like, watch it whenever you want, real time, plug and play, right? That was their why. How they did it, they didn't have the luxury that Netflix, Hulu, all of the other streaming providers have today, which is internet in everyone's houses. They had physical cable boxes that they had to solve for. So the how was a different solution than someone like a Hulu's how now. So technology wasn't technically there yet. They were too advanced, too ahead of the market. And then what they're creating is a physical hardware box that sits next to your cable box that you plug into, and then eventually that goes down and it's just in the DVR box itself. So start with the why as opposed to starting with the what do we design, because if they started with the what, they probably would have just invented a cable box that does something not as great, and it probably wouldn't be as popular. And it was a verb for a very long time, like, oh, I TiVo'd that. Like, oh, I'm going to go home and watch the TiVo channel. Now we have Netflix that kind of replaced them in that market. And it's like, Netflix and chill. I'm going to go watch Netflix. Like, I'm going to stream it. Like, the word stream in our mind, like, you think Netflix right off the bat.
Absolutely.
Even though there are lots of other streaming opportunities out there, and everyone's disrupting that market. But yeah, I would say start with why when you're designing anything.
Awesome. We are out of time. I want to thank everybody who's joining us live for joining us. Aarde, thanks again for doing this. Really appreciate the hospitality, bringing us in, bringing in the rack, everybody here for being live as well too. Really want to thank everybody. And we'll see you on the next customer book club discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.